Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Samaan, and it's wonderful being back with you. Today we start a new video series called Addiction Unmasked. I'm sure it's going to be interesting because everybody knows somebody who has issues with addiction, either behavioral, chemical, or some other kind of addiction. Addiction has, I guess we could say, many meanings, because we talk to someone and they'll say, well, they'll say this about it, talk to someone else, and of course you talk to the addict who hasn't come out of their addiction yet, and there is no such thing. That's just imagination, or that's your problem, or, whatever they might say about it, until they hit that bottom and say, okay, I got a problem. So too many people express nothing good about the subject. Perhaps synonyms best describe addiction as an obsession with infatuation, with passion, love for someone, something, anything, fondness for, a weakness for, penchant for, or a propensity for, even an appetite for, or a mania for something, someone. Those synonyms, they pretty much describe what many would identify as addiction. Probably the best definition is what AA uses. Alcoholics Anonymous gives the most popular definition of addiction as an inability to stop using a substance or engaging in a behavior. So remember, it's substance or behavior, even though it's causing psychological and physical harm. And in many places they add to the fact it doesn't matter if it's one time or many times or occasionally or frequently. If you know it's going to create a problem with you or with others, then you have a problem in that area. Hence, perhaps there's addiction there. Escaping the mental burnout is what addiction often sends someone into that direction, an escape to feel better. AA introductory pamphlet describes the addiction to alcoholism as a physical compulsion coupled with a mental obsession. Physical, mental. Mental, physical, and relational issues come out of all that. 4 C's describing addiction are often spoken of, regardless of the addiction, be it illicit drugs, prescription pills, alcohol, smoking, sex, gambling, and you might add a few others in there. Everyone who has an addiction struggles with the same 4 factors: craving, compulsion, control, and consequences. Craving is desiring. And some may go a little further with that definition of craving, but for the most part, desiring. And when they go a little further with it, they kind of add the physical sensations that bring about, that go along with craving, the intensity of physical sensations. Compulsion, compulsion is a forceful urge. And it's not compulsion isn't a bad thing unless it's used in bad ways. Socially, my temperament is supine compulsive. I have a temperament that can be an introvert or an extrovert, depending on circumstances. And I can be task-oriented or social-oriented, depending on the circumstances. And I'm a thinker, but having that compulsive side of that particular temperament makes me a compulsive thinker. So I'm often thinking, more often than not, thinking too much. And again, harness the thinking, you got it going in the right direction. Not if you don't harness it, if you leave it uncontrolled, it's like that team of horses pulling the wagon. You're letting go of the reins and off they go when they get spooked. and they'll run off the trail and over the rocks and even over the cliff if they're not paying much attention, which wild horses don't when they're spooked like that. Well, compulsion can be that bad or it can be that good. Use it in a good direction, but in the case of what we're talking about here regarding addiction, this compulsion, it's not so good. It's more in the negative. So craving, compulsion, control, it's like a double-edged sword. It's controlling whatever you're addicted to, maintaining access to it, keeping it safe, recognizing there may be threats to it, so protecting whatever it is, constantly being able to be aware of where it's at, how to get it, and so on. And that's substance or behavior. Remember, some people addicted to love, addicted to relationship, and they control the relationship. You know, how long have, you went to the grocery store, that only takes 1 hour, you were gone an hour and 15 minutes. Where were you for the rest of that time? Control. They have to know because it becomes a threat to them. And that threat has to be squelched as quickly as possible. And of course, they never get the answers that they want because they don't believe whatever is being said to them is true because they're feeling out of control and they have to regain the control. And sometimes that leads into consequences. The consequences are the bad things that tend to happen after that fact. Anger comes out, violence may come out, aggression, or rejection is a consequence, abandonment is a consequence, or physical illness can be a consequence to addictive behaviors, addictive issues. So craving, compulsion, control, and that two-edged sword of control is often that it's controlling me now. I'm not controlling it. I'm thinking, I'm having the illusion I'm controlling it, but the substance is controlling me. And the consequences of that control result in that. So craving, compulsion, control, and consequences are the 4 C's describing addiction. It's a condition of spirit, soul, and body. Can't just address one area. You can't just address the mind when dealing with addiction. You have to address all 3 areas. And many years ago, and I used to be a instructor for addictions professionals getting their state certification in Florida as addictions professionals. And I taught the classes, and it's always interesting hearing the stories of where the students were all coming from. And they had to be in sobriety 3 years or longer in order to be in that program to get that certification. Every case, it's spirit, soul, and body issues that developed from their addictions. Our focus on addiction in this video series is not solely on one use or one user. We're attempting to give a broader understanding of compulsive behavior attached to obsessive thinking as a spiritual fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. We have to look at the whole spectrum. Years ago, they just focused on the mind or changing the behavior when you went into a treatment program. And slowly over the years, you started to see a shifting, adding in the spirit, soul, and body, encompassing the whole thing in the treatment. And certainly when you encompass it all, you have a better chance of good results. It's everywhere. Today's most common addictions are, what do you think they might be? Alcohol, illicit drugs, substances of some sort, sex, internet, gambling, gaming. That's becoming bigger and bigger. cell phone use. I don't know about you, but by the time I get out to the car, if I don't have my cell phone, it's, oh no, I got to go back and get my cell phone. And think years ago, we didn't have such a thing, and we'd go places and it wouldn't concern us that we didn't have a cell phone. Now it concerns us. We don't have a cell phone. What do I do? Work can be a addiction. Certainly work is a good thing, but like anything else, if you overdo it, if you exaggerate it, it's a behavior that can turn addictive. And there are others as well, and I'm sure you have a few others in mind, people you know, or perhaps yourself, on certain issues. Ignorance is not bliss when we're talking about addiction. Those having addiction issues walk around wearing a mask of normalcy for all to see. When looking into the mirror, even as they look into the mirror, they desire to see the mask. They don't want to see the truth. They want to see what's covering that truth. They don't want to see what's hiding underneath the mask. What do you see when you look at masks? Or when you look in the mirror, what do you see? Do you see a mask, or do you see your true self? This morning we were talking, and I heard that a college professor said he was offended by the word truth. Oh my gosh, there's someone who is just what we're talking about here. There's a mask, hiding what's behind the mask, only wanting to see the mask and not wanting to see the truth. So the truth becomes dangerous and perhaps threatening. Ritual masks, as an example, if you think of ritual masks, can be very revealing when used as representation of the human face. The mask can disclose two fundamental aspects of the human condition. First is the hiding of the fear and emotion-driven part of self or soul. That's down in the basement. Remember, we've talked about the basement of the brain and the upper room, what I call the upper room of the brain, so those two halves, top and bottom. That basement is comprises the limbic system of the brain, which is your fight or flight or freeze center of the brain, your fear and emotion center of the brain. Down in that dark place, that basement area, that's one area that comprises addiction. The second is the self-protective, egocentric emotional reasoning. I say egocentric emotional reasoning, putting that together. We can be egocentric in the upper part, which isn't very good thinking unless it's necessary, but it's more down there in the bottom. So logical up top, emotional down in the bottom. So egocentric emotional reasoning that turns selfishly angry when threatened or exposed, often seen as hypocrisy in religion. This professor I was talking about walked out of his interview because of the word truth. He felt so angry and threatened by truth, he had to leave. I'm damaged, or I'm not damaged. Which are you? If I'm damaged, I may not want you to see that. If you're damaged, you may not want others to see it. If you're broken, you may feel it, but not want to face it. If you're addicted to something, certainly at first, you don't want to see it, but as the consequences increase, you begin to face it. The title, Addiction Unmasked, reveals a condition that can quickly destroy a person's spirit, soul, and body. Not only does this condition damage the thinking and emotional faculties of the mind or soul. Remember, your soul is made up of your mind, your will, your intellect. It also sets into motion an interplay of impairing physiological functioning that ravages the body. It's not just affecting the mind, it's affecting all of you, spirit, soul, and body. Addiction says, who cares? The consequential loss of the human spirit positions God in the cruel judgment seat. God is the punisher. God is this, God is that. Be careful. He's going to throw a lightning bolt down at you if you do wrong. So, no, don't want to think about that. Let's put him away. Look at yourself, addictions tells the victim. God doesn't want an addict. You're not good enough. You're not ready. There'll be time for it later. There's never time for it later. They're hooked. Of course, later never comes because addictive thinking has taken over. Emotional reasoning, which emotional reasoning, an example of it is, I feel good, so this must be good. I believe this is truth, so it must be truth, even though it's not truth. So the real truth, can't get angry at that. It's a threat. You have to reject it. You have to get angry with it. You have to put down whoever is bringing it up, because my truth is truth, not the truth. So emotional reasoning, I feel good, so this must be good, is now driving the soul. The addictive process, which may have begun innocently enough, becomes a monster within, a beast with the lure of a seductress, entrapping its victim into a dichotomy of desire and pain. The 4 C's. Never give up. Keep going forward. Keep taking the steps forward. If you're recognizing there's a addictive problem with you, whether it's behavioral substance or some other issue that's causing you pain, don't give up. This new video series of Addiction Unmasked will identify 5 essential areas of spirit, soul, and body addiction. Spiritual origins of the addictive process is the first. The second will be behavioral origins of the addictive process. The third will be discerning the addictive personality. The fourth, drugs in the brain. What happens there? And of course, you can't talk about addiction without talking about recovery. So the 5th will be recovery as we go through this series. What do you say? Some say I'm free to do everything, but not everything is healthy. I'm free to do everything, but I will not do anything that destroys my autonomy or freedom and takes away my freedom. I'm sure this is going to be interesting for you, this entire series, because either you know someone who has these issues, perhaps you've had them in the past and you're in recovery, or perhaps you'd just like to know more about this, and perhaps your kids are showing signs with the gaming and other things that are a concern for you. Learning to understand whatever the problem is helps the fear to go away, because you're replacing fear with knowledge, understanding, which gives you insight, being able to make better decisions for the future. And you put all that together, and that's wisdom. May your troubles be more minor, your blessings more, and happiness come through your door. See you next time. God bless.